Oh boy, the struggle is real. We literally just finished the final episode and this show has just blown our minds.
Surprise, we've been watching it the whole time and we thought, you know what, it's so good we better actually review it so more people get onto it. Let's hit it.
Okay, so this show is based on the book by Leanne Moriarty, who is actually an Australian author, and it was created by David E. Kelly, who did Boston Legal and Goliath and a few other shows, and then it was directed by Jean-Marc Vallée, who was actually brought onto the property quite late in the process. Reese Witherspoon and Nicole Kidman had read the book, loved it, got the rights, decided to go with HBO after a bidding war between them and Netflix, and then Jean-Marc Vallée, they were about to go into production, and he was like, I'll direct 2 episodes. Then he directs all 7.
Directed the whole thing. Now, he's the guy that did Dallas Buyers Club and Wild, which are both really good movies. Basically, the story is about when the story starts, we have a murder mystery. Someone has been killed at this school fundraiser. We don't know who's been killed or who did it. But over the course of 7 episodes, we kind of tap into the lives of these kind of these 3 mums, and obviously we get more that kind of join into it, living in this really rich area in the US, and we slowly start to unravel their seemingly perfect lives and find out they're not so perfect until things build to a head. And we get this completely out of control ending, which was fantastic. Now, what we will say before getting into this review is that we have not read the book. This is a TV show. We don't need to have read the book because the TV show exists. If your enjoyment is based off the accuracy to the book, this isn't going to be the review for you because we are talking about this as a TV show.
And of course, I mean, it's not that we might end up checking out the book at some point. I mean, it's a New York #1 bestseller. It is Australian based and etc. so forth. But at this stage, we're just talking about the TV show because this thing was such a piece of art.
It was phenomenal. So from this point onwards, we are going into full spoilers. So if you haven't seen the show yet, it's only 7 episodes. That is pretty much all there is at this stage. It is worth checking out because it is incredible. Let's dive into this.
There is going to be so many different things we're going to talk about here because this show is just so packed with such incredible goodness at every single corner. But we'll start with acting because it is just unbelievable. At first, what an insane cast. Obviously our leads, Nicole Kidman, Reese Witherspoon, Shailene Woodley. Then we've got Laura Dern, Alexander Skarsgård, Adam Scott, Zoe Kravitz. I'm going to miss a few here, and that list goes on. And then we go down to the kid actors, which are crushing it. We got one girl in particular that plays Reese Witherspoon's daughter, who is also in the second season, The Leftovers as well. The cast here, everyone was exceptional.
Just phenomenal, and obviously this director in the past has been known to get a lot out of his actors. He's won people Oscars for Dallas Buyers Club, he got Reese Witherspoon nominated for Wild, and I mean everyone here really does some of the best work we've ever seen. And the person we want to start with first is Nicole Kidman, because over the last couple of years, our appreciation for just how insanely good Nicole Kidman is has just grown and grown. Obviously she was just Oscar nominated for Lion, but this here is the best work I have seen her do. Like, this was...
Yeah, I mean, like, we haven't seen a lot of her stuff, but like, God, I just need to see everything she's done now because her work here is so subtle, it's so complex, and you can see she's just a master of her form. She really understands everything about herself as a person and as an actor, and she really uses it in every single scene, and it's so magnetic. I just can't handle it.
Every single thing she does, every twitch, every glance, every blink is just so well placed here. And honestly, I want to see her getting Emmy recognition for this. Obviously, it's going to be a tough time once Fargo gets thrown into the mix for miniseries as well. But this is honestly some of the best work I've ever seen.
But it's her thoughts and her reactions, and playing off Alexander Skarsgård, who crushes it here.
I didn't know he could be that good. Like,
well, I mean, like, him in Melancholia is fantastic, and he plays a very opposite role in Melancholia to what he does here, and it just shows this guy has so much range, and he is such a talented actor. But between Nicole Kidman and him, just playing off one another, their reactions, whether it be in the background for one scene and the foreground for the other, like, it's constant how good they are.
Their marriage counselling scene the first time when they first sat down and it played out in a 2-shot, similar to as you're seeing now. It just had both of them on screen at the same time, and watching how they reacted to each other and their flow is just not only a combination of great directing, great photography in that scene, and phenomenal acting. It was just everything really came together. Like, it was really, really perfect. Obviously, we also have Reese Witherspoon as well.
Yeah, just absolutely fantastic. She nailed it, and yeah, I mean, like, we've known her for playing roles similar to this before, but like, to have dialogue that's this good, it really just elevated her performance to another level. And playing off Adam Scott, I mean, I've seen Adam Scott in quite a few things where I really do enjoy him, but here he really got to show his dramatic chops
for this role. Like,
and
he was fantastic.
He played down everything. He was really, again, very subtle with a lot of his stuff and suppressed a lot of his anger, which really just made him glow flow in scenes.
And the thing is, again, like before we start going to the other characters as well, just with those first two couples, seeing how things evolved between them all. Obviously, once the abuse angle came into it with Celeste and Perry, things just continually got more and more interesting. It was a really, I think the direction of that was actually really, really well handled. It was like, this happens. This is a real thing that needs to be stopped. And I think it takes a really, really good director to not turn that into kind of drama. I think it just kind of felt like it was organically happening. And we're sitting there as viewers going, this is seriously messed up. And so it's so great to see in the end that Perry got his comeuppance, but we'll get to that later.
Plus, again, but I mean, like, even just on that and the whole abuse thing, it was just handled so well, and I've spoken to a lot of people as well that I know personally, and they can relate and they understand Nicole Kidman's character, because people get frustrated when they're watching movies or something like that, and it's like, why don't you just leave, why don't you just do that? But it's like, no, it was explained perfectly here.
Yeah, she did really love him, which becomes such a challenging thing, and the way the counselling scenes broke that down, and the counsellor just kept cutting to the core of those issues, was fantastically done. Obviously, we also had the affair that popped up with Madeline and her theatre guy, the director, whose name I can't remember right now.
And just on that as well, that actually wasn't in the book. I was just reading before as well. But yeah, the author gave the blessing of like that being used in the film, in the show, which is fantastic.
Worked really well.
Yeah, it was fantastic to see.
Obviously, then flowing on to Gordon and Renata, played by Jeffrey Nordling and Laura Dern. Their dynamic was also excellent, because with those two, what we got was two people who seemed to somehow work perfectly, even though they were kind of polar opposites. Renata's this kind of freak out, control freak type person, and Gordon was just so chilled. And we can't go past how great his footwear was in every scene. Like, what a relaxed,
what a hilarious character as well, and just the balance.
It's so real.
Yeah, the balance of comedy and
dad.
drama, and that was kind of the best thing about this being a miniseries and being 7 episodes. Is as much as maybe a couple of moments might have felt stretched, if this was a movie, we probably would have only got really a 2-dimensional look at most of these characters, especially someone like Gordon. We wouldn't have been able to see his scenes like he had in the final episode, where he approaches Madeline. You know, and like Shailene Woodley's character there. So we don't get like that contrast that we would in a movie, but we get it in this show.
And Shailene Woodley as Jane was excellent. That's definitely, I think, the best role I've seen her have so far. And her work with the child actor that played Ziggy, considering that was her kind of dynamic, was her and her son, was just heartbreaking and so well done. As someone who's been so heavily abused in her past and is kept being called back to that moment. What a beautifully handled kind of performance there, and what she was really, really well kind of framed in every shot. You really felt because of the way each scene she was in was shot, which I just thought was excellently done.
Yeah, she handles troubled characters really well. I mean, like her performance in The Descendants, I know you haven't seen it, but like, my goodness, she just really knows how to nail, I suppose, a character that's just struggling with an emotion, trying to come to terms with it, and actually speak to another person about it as well.
Yeah, that was the interesting thing, is seeing these people, because obviously what we get from being viewers and not being characters within this is that we get to see the characters when they're not with each other. So knowing all of what was going on in their personal lives and seeing it build up and waiting for them, just tell someone, just talk to someone about it. Really, really interesting reflection on how real life works, because so many of us bottle stuff up and don't communicate it with other people. And this was a really, really piercing look into that world. We also have to say Zoe Kravitz as well was the other standout performer here, who has just been magical in kind of everything we've seen her do, aside from the Allegiant series, which you can also say Shailene Woodley, you know, let's forget about that. But Zoe Kravitz as well, like obviously she was in Mad Max, and just those little sensitive things, she's just so captivating.
She's like a mystical creature on fucking screen, hey. Like, I can't handle like how much I love her in every single scene. So much
presence, you just zoom, like,
so exciting. And obviously we knew she could sing as well, so in that last episode it's like, wow, please, like, just keep going. But my God, I need to see her.
And obviously
more,
with her being
so exciting.
her being the person that pushed Perry in the end. I mean, obviously that scene was just so well handled, and that's when we come to talking about the direction here and how well Jean-Marc Vallée had control over this entire series, because quite often people have an issue with shows that are handheld. This was handheld the entire time, practically borderline shaky cam the entire time, and yet no one I've ever seen managed to complain about that, because it is so well done. It just adds that extra level of realism, like documentary style, where you're just kind of watching this happen. But at the same time, the photography was gorgeous, because the mix of colors, the way light hit things, they shot through like chandeliers and stained glass windows and stuff a lot in this, and just added this kind of mystical kind of vibe to the whole show that was just so gorgeous.
It just had this real kind of natural look to it, a natural feel.
And it wasn't just the visuals that were gorgeous. I think the thing on the technical level that impressed me the most was the sound design. Every scene was either punctuated with perfectly timed silence, with kids laughing and playing in the background, with the constant roll of the waves on the ocean. That stuff is just so well done, and it all kind of came together in the final 10 minutes of the show, which was all basically music and montage showing how these characters had come together in the end through this singular event, through this thing that we are women in kind of a world of men, I guess. And it was such a beautiful thing to see how kind of what a fantastic score had been through the whole thing, that kind of come up and appear in such a powerful way at the end. But obviously the waves cross-cutting with those flashbacks.
Well, I mean, look, the editing across the entire series was just so on point and perfected. And I mean, if you've got problems with these flashbacks and stuff, fuck off, because they were handled so goddamn well. Like, this is how you do it, you know? And like, it was also, it would not give you any information. A lot of the time you'd sit there and be like, I don't know what just happened.
You have a sudden shot of something, but it triggers a feeling or an emotion, so which puts you in the same headspace.
Plus, like, it's not like he knows what he's doing. He's coming back to those points later on, and he constantly repeated, you know, images or scenes, so you were so goddamn familiar with it. So when things started to wrap up, you go, oh, I understand.
And he always knew when to cut away as well, which is the important thing. If a conversation could be implied, if something happening could be implied, he wouldn't show it, which most shows out there do. And then you sit there and you're like, okay, I already got what was happening. He just knew when to cut away and move on, and you gather what happened in the space between by what came before and what came after. And that is great directing and writing, obviously.
And obviously, I mean, like, even take that last episode, for example, we don't even get to see what happened to Perry until the very end. Like, we cut away from it again, and we get that incredible sequence with just like that high-pitched noise of the room, with each character talking until we hear Celeste, Nicole Kidman's character, start speaking about the abuse, and then we finally get the whole sequence at the end there. But it was just so well handled.
Just an excellent show all round. We did have a couple of issues with episode, I think, 6, with a bit of pacing things, because it kind of felt like we're kind of getting, okay, we need to get to the ending now. But that aside, this really is, it's one of my favorite series ever. It's definitely one of the best series I've seen. And all round, it's just an brilliantly executed TV show. Beautifully directed, beautifully acted, beautifully written, beautifully shot, beautifully composed. The sound was excellent the entire time. The music was excellent. And it's just really involving. It was such a captivating framework. I think the murder thing kind of stopped mattering to people that much at the end. And yes, we did work out what was going to happen at the end before it happened, but the journey itself was so captivating and the characters were so interesting that's what kept us anchored.
Yeah, plus, I mean, thematically, obviously, like, it spoke so much about, like, abuse and then gun violence and violence in general, and then, like, women and men, and there was so much they, like, were allowed to say without it being confronting or right up in our face.
It wasn't preaching anything. It was just, this is actually, like, I mean, aside from that really over-the-top ending, which I don't think anyone can necessarily kind of relate to, I don't think there's been that many people in a murder situation, but the idea that we all live lives that aren't perfect and we all put on this mask to try to be someone that we're not necessarily feeling like at the time is such a beautiful idea for a show. And look, I think in the end, we could almost, there was kind of a mini setup for there possibly being a second season perhaps. I don't know if there's a second book, but if the show is kind of, like, people are craving more, I'm sure they could go again and work it further. But for now, what a truly excellent show.
What an incredible show. Just, I mean, fantastic. And if you know people that haven't watched it, start telling them. Get them to watch it because this show is so good.
Get it done. So that was our series review of Big Little Lies.
Absolutely incredible. We both freaking loved it. But what did you think? Let us know in the comment section below.
And while you're down there, it's probably worth hitting our subscribe button so you can see more stuff from us.
And you can also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, all at Breaking Banner.